Hi everybody.
Good
How you doing?
Great.
This should be the conspiracy theory.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. We'll let everybody introduce themselves and we're going to start down there.
Hi, I'm Dan, otherwise known as Daniel A. Willis. I write mostly historical works with elements of fantasy to them.
My name is Boom Baumgartner. I just recently published Laura's Jinx, but usually I work for sciencefiction.com as an analyst. I'm not an analyst, a columnist. And I love conspiracy theories. I'm so excited.
Hi, I'm A.M. Burns. I've written a lot. A little bit of urban fantasy, sci-fi, comedy, you name it, I write it.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Chuck Anderson. I mostly write flash fiction, and it's real easy to put conspiracy theories into small stories or short stories.
Okay.
Speak up. Hi, and I'm Deanna Bell. Author, editor, write short stories, books, you name it, I've done it, and then some. And I actually enjoy conspiracy theories. I think Hodges is my favorite character on Bones right now when he gets into those. Yes. Okay, so what is a conspiracy theory about? Anybody?
It's the idea that we have somebody in the shadows controlling and manipulating the world government, where the idea that every little thing that happens is being manipulated by something. So when you didn't show up, we were like the lizard people got it.
No lizard people can get me.
Yes.
Pretend to Illuminati.
Anybody else have a different one, or is that pretty overall?
That was pretty good.
I kind of tame it down, actually. I think it's just any group of people agreeing to make an outcome that, there's definitely like gas conspiracies that are a real thing, but conspiracy theories when we think a group of people are making agreements, like Dana disappearing.
And being the historian on the group, I'm going to go with conspiracy theories also can be very realistic things. One of the words that are often used for conspiracy groups is cabal. And cabal came from the historical term. It was the initial 5 people who were plotting against the King of England back in the 1640s.
Oh, the Civil War.
Yes.
Was that theory or fact?
No, that was theory.
That was
So
a theory.
those five people were known, they were tried, and then those initials were what they were referred to. That's how they came up with the word cabal.
So it wasn't a theory, it was a fact.
It was a fact.
That was a fact.
And
Okay.
also the
So that's a
Galactic
theory, is the theoretical possibility of a group of people manipulating, as opposed to the actual conspiracies
Right.
that have facts to support them. And I think that's an important distinction.
I think that's definitely an
Yeah.
important distinction. I think that conspiracy theory is something people use to make sure people, I think you're crackpot and paranoid, but like if we know for the Gulf of Tonkin, everyone had a conspiracy about how that was like manipulated. The Gulf of Tonkin is how we got into the Vietnam War. It was definitely a cover-up on that. So sometimes conspiracy theories are real.
Okay, somebody's got their hand up in the back.
I think it's important to note that a lot of conspiracy theories always come from outside the people that you would expect to talk about a theory. Conspiracy theories are never from the insiders of a group that may have been left out. They're not, Washington conspiracy theories don't tend to come from the inner groups of Washington. They're always the outside people. They always come from the outside voters.
So are you saying people who feel kind of disenfranchised often
Yeah.
come up with conspiracy theories to
Every
explain their
conspiracy
situations?
theory that I've looked at, that it always tends to come from outside looking in, never from inside looking out.
And a good point that goes along with that is so often the people who come up with a conspiracy theory or promote a conspiracy theory are, as you said, they're on the outside, so they're often considered the fringe. Sometimes they're really not.
Insider's a whistleblower.
Right. But, so,
Exactly.
That's really interesting.
I agree that that's generally correct, but what about John Perkins and Confessions of an Economic Hitman?
I
don't know about it, can you tell us?
So he was someone who was recruited through CIA and the State Department and all this to basically wage economic warfare on third world countries by getting them into debt. And so he was doing this for the State Department and the CIA and the banks and the IMF for years and years and years, and then he retired, and after he retired, he wrote the book.
But he outed himself, right?
Right.
So it's
And
not
that-
a conspiracy theory, it's a true conspiracy.
Yeah, he was, telling what he did, that's got a little different, yeah.
Yeah, conspiracy theories would be things like, right now the one that's floating around is shadow government, I believe. And one of the shows that I'm watching, which is timeless, has something called Rittenhouse, which is like an inside conspiracy theory, which I'm dying to find out what the heck it is.
I hope the show though can't.
I think it has to be done by outsiders because the insiders have the facts.
Right.
They don't have to theorize about it.
Everyone else has a leap of faith, everyone has a belief there's a rational explanation for everything happening. There has to be somebody planning this, because otherwise it would make no sense at all.
There's actually a biological component to that. Do you mind if I, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, I'm kind of a little bit more, I allow a little bit more freedom.
It's
Could you
called-
repeat it, a biological?
There's a human biological component to conspiracy theories. And it's because humans evolutionarily have something called pattern recognition. And when it kind of comes to a paranoia things, it's called apophenia. So that's like when you look at a house and you're like, that house looks like it has a face. That's like the mild form of it. Or the man on the moon, I guess, is a better example. Maybe not all of you are as crazy as I am.
With me as headlights.
Yeah, car grills.
Like, yeah, and like the grills look like their mouths.
They actually intentionally designed them that way.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Some cars are designed to look mean because they're supposed to be aggressive, and others
Bad
are made to
cars.
look friendly.
Yeah, and others have smiley grills
Really?
because they're pitched towards the urban housewife.
So there are people behind the scenes pulling the strings and subtle cuts.
That's been written about in Wall Street Journal, so it's not a theory, it's a
Yeah.
fact.
Yeah.
In any case, so there are things like how do you pronounce it? Pareidolia? I can't remember. That's like when, say for example, you feel a vibration on your thigh. What do you think? Oh, it's my cell phone. But it's not. It's just you felt something shake and your brain filled in the pattern. Oh, of course, this has to be your cell phone. So the reason why conspiracy theories are so popular is because you look at, like, for example, the British engineering Star Wars murders. There's a lot of people who worked on Star Wars, which is the missile
Defense system.
defense system. A lot of them died really suspiciously. But if you just take them one by one, you're like, no, I could believe this is a suicide. But you put them all together, and because we have pattern recognition as humans, we're like, conspiracy. Someone is offing all these random British scientists who aren't really that important to the Star Wars program. So there's like peripherally,
So like intrusive type.
yeah.
Perhaps we can create sort of an artificial distinction between the conspiracy theory and the conspiracy hypothesis. The theory includes a certain premise, and it includes data which tend to support this, which other people will say, no, your data is, we do not include data which says, no one could possibly believe this data exists.
Right.
Where, say, well, there have been instances like this before, and there are certain incidents like this, which outsiders agree to. Those incidents exist, and therefore you come to a conclusion, as opposed to the reptiloids are in control. You say, where is your data? And you say, I don't need data. And so that goes out to what we might call the reptiloid, hypothesis.
Right.
Which is supported by nothing.
Well, that's
And I
actually,
suspect, for instance, the Gulf of Tonkin conspiracy theory, it had several things going for it, including, slithy-eyed background, historical, examination of previous times we went to war, and saying, this kind of looks similar to what happened then.
right. And also what you brought up is something called, it's a fallacy, what is it called? The ignorance fallacy. If the data's not there, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist fallacy. So like just because we have no evidence that aliens exist. Exactly. And I think that follows along with what you're saying. That's how conspiracy theorists are. There's no evidence that the reptiloids are taking over.
But there's no evidence they haven't.
Right, exactly. And maybe they're hiding that evidence.
Except as an English major, having done many research papers, I know how you can take facts and twist them any way that you like.
You're the conspiracy person. We have to watch out for you, Dana.
Yeah, when you guys want to speak, please raise your hand. Yeah, I am watching. Gentleman in the glasses in the back.
Yeah, I think another component of a conspiracy theory is that the proponents of the theories usually will ignore facts that tend to contradict their theory.
Because it's part of the conspiracy.
That's part of it. Yeah, the component, they say that the people controlling things are planning that evidence to discredit them. They won't believe counterfacts.
Elections are rigged.
Counterfactual arguments won't work on the proponents of good conspiracy theories.
Okay, Mulder.
All right, gentleman in the front.
And what I'd like to say is, several times they have said that it was not a theory because it was supported by fact. Once again, the winner through history writes history. Consequently, what I might consider a conspiracy would probably be put down because of the fact that I doubt that I'll be the winner when things come through. And that's just it.
Yeah, the pattern recognition is even deeper. There's actually evolutionary reasons for being able to put together patterns. Because if you see the grass move, you know, I mean, is this a predator? Is there a predator out there? You know what I mean? And so you focus on that. There might be a sweet nothing, but you recognize it. The other thing that happens around conspiracy is its misinterpretation of data in making a malevolent interpretation of the data. Because in real life, think about chance, random events occurring, you know, shit happens. It's really impressive how often that happens.
That's what they want you to think.
There's another element okay.
This one has had his hand up long.
I just looked down to check the time and put your hand
And I
up.
think everyone.
Yeah.
I was just going, you said you were an enthusiast. Do each of you have your own favorite pet conspiracy, either from its absurdity or because you think there might be something to it?
I'll start with that one. This is my pet peeve, conspiracy theory. The elections is rigged. I work for Denver elections. No, they're not. It would be really, really, really hard in Denver, especially, to get a fake outcome of an election. I mean, there's so many, there's so many processes. So when I hear somebody say the elections are rigged, I just want to reach out and slap them.
God, there's too many. If you guys are really interested in this stuff, there's a podcast called Thinking Sideways. It will give you all your favorite conspiracies. And it'll also give you a really good idea of why most conspiracy theories aren't right. Like, yes, we don't know why these things happen and there's something suspicious, but here's the reasons why it's not, all these different thoughts. I really like the Philadelphia experiment. Do you guys know what that is?
No.
It's basically, there's a, you guys might have to help me on the facts a little bit. There's an experiment to like bend light, and apparently they did too good of a job and now they are lost into time.
And wasn't it like a U.S. warship?
Yeah, the USS Philadelphia.
It was World War II. Supposedly they were doing a test to make a ship, a destroyer, radar invisible.
Right.
But through weird science, they ended up teleporting the thing from Philadelphia, I think, to Baltimore and back.
Yeah.
And then there were bits missing and crew members.
Bits of crew members.
I get
transporter accidents.
the problem with the Philadelphia experiment is there's so many versions out there, and also the X-Files episode really confuses me. So thank you so much because I was like, I can't remember what the actual facts of it are.
There was a very bad movie.
Was it?
Yeah.
Well, it's also a very bad X-Files episode.
Right. The only fact that has really been put out there is that X number of crewmen died in the experiment. There has not been released to date exactly how they died. The thought is that,
Sorry, I want to change my thing. Keep talking, I'm sorry.
okay, that's fine. The general thought is that somehow they, in the process of doing this camouflaging, some of the people caught vertigo because the camouflaging was working inwardly and fell off the ship.
Oh.
That's the working theory.
That's interesting.
Not conspiracy theory, I should say, but who knows? Because the military hasn't released the information.
Okay, so we are right here.
Well, she wanted to add something.
Can I just change it to MK Ultra? I really like MK Ultra.
I'm sorry.
MK Ultra is like a CIA experimental whatever's with using LSD to do mind control.
Oh.
Awesome.
And the keys.
The men who stare goats.
Huh?
The men who stare goats. That whole.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what MK Ultra.
No. Oh, geez. I mean, I'm going to go with the classic Illuminati shadow government thing.
Good.
Of course, then we've got the modern one that they're running Donald Trump just so Hillary will get elected.
Yes.
I almost believe that.
I know.
Especially now as he's sucking the finances out of his campaign. He's throwing it. Oh. Is this just a simple business decision?
Trump is such a nice explanation.
Moving on.
I think as somebody who's lived in Colorado for so long, the black helicopters.
Oh.
You know, I hear that reference a lot. Could you expand on it a little bit?
My understanding is that they were involved with cattle mutilations back in the 70s and 80s.
Oh,
That's another one, okay. That's another telling.
What I know. Oh, sorry.
And I'm sure they made a bad movie.
There's a lot of that variants.
Yeah, and the helicopters had a stealth technology where you couldn't hear them coming at night either. So that's one. And then the other one I forgot about was an old one, was fluoride in the water.
Yes.
Yes. Dumbing down the population, so.
On the black helicopter one, we had a state senator back in the, I guess it was in the about late 90s. And that was his big thing, was he wanted to fight back against the black helicopters flying over Fort Collins.
Really?
And they went out there and we looked at those black helicopters and he pointed them out. And I'm like, okay, A, they're dark green. B, I can see the words U.S. Army on the side. And yes, I can hear them. You're 90 years old, you can't hear them.
Well, and then there's the whole association with the UN taking control of the world with the
His
and
brain didn't get outside
watch
Colorado.
us, is
Let's
what
take
it
it
is.
back.
yeah, something I never quite followed.
Bro, Agenda 21?
Is that it?
Probably.
Well, it's the new manifestation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, except I've been hearing about black helicopters in the UN since the 70s.
Yeah.
And Agenda 21 is like
People
from last year.
discredit conspiracy theories so quickly. You have to. For me, it always goes back like when everyone was saying the CIA is bringing drugs in after Vietnam.
They
And
did.
everyone said that was a conspiracy, that would never happen. It turns out, in fact,
They did.
they were bringing them in, and then they brought in the cocaine. And so it's like, just because they're crazy doesn't mean they're always wrong.
Exactly. That's a good point. I do think chemtrails is crazy though, so.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, lady in the red shirt and then the gentleman on the seat.
I think, I'm from New Mexico, and of course our big one is Roswell. But I see that one as a conspiracy theory that's occurred because it's gotten caught up in a feedback loop, almost. Because my own conclusions, the own conclusions that I've drawn is that something, some secret military something landed there, and because the military changed the story, because it was something like, oh my gosh, you told them what?
Right.
And because they changed that story, it developed into this feedback loop of it was really aliens and the bodies are, and the ship got taken to Area 51, and the part of that has been completely forgotten about, or changed, it was dropped off over the years, is that the bodies went to Hangar 13 at Wright Pat.
Yes.
But I find that one interesting because I see that kind of as a feedback loop, something that's kind of grown strangely organically because a story got changed.
Right.
It probably perfectly innocently, but somebody going, wait, you told them it was what? No, you have to go back and change that because we don't want them to know it was X. So something, in my opinion, perfectly innocent, like an experimental level.
Do you remember the first time you heard that story?
What,
About Roswell?
well, I grew up in Troy, Ohio, which is just north of Dayton.
Okay.
So,
by Wright Patterson.
So I came upon the Roswell story through my schoolmates going, the alien bodies are in Hangar 13 at Wright Path.
Yeah.
It's like, what alien bodies? From the Roswell crash. That sort of thing. So that's how I came into that. But just in reading different accounts of how the Roswell story has evolved. My own personal conclusion is that it did that because, from something perfectly innocent, you get this weird dogleg of a conspiracy theory about aliens.
Well,
and
consider
Area
that now,
51.
they can't even agree on where the crash actually occurred now.
Yeah.
Nowadays, they can't point the actual crash site.
Wasn't Jimmy Carter supposed to clear all this up?
There's three separate sites around Roswell that purported to be the crash site. And no one can agree on which one it actually was at.
Here's a,
The gentleman right there.
The point I was going to bring up has less to do with conspiracy, but more to do about theory. In order for something to be a theory, it has to be not just based on observable facts,
Right.
but also predict. And so it can be tested. A lot of conspiracy theory just winds up being blue sky stuff in terms of,
Should we rename this panel Conspiracy Hypotheses?
Conspiracies.
Conspiracy. Yeah, but conspiracies are actually real things.
Well, some of these are real things.
That's true. Yes, you're right.
One of the things that I've noticed is juries. When they're presented with a criminal case, courts of law act nothing like TV or movies. They're nothing, absolutely nothing like it. And you get a presentation, a theory of what happened by the prosecution, a theory of what happened by defense, and the jurors will make up a legend about what occurred. It's not that far off from conspiracy. What exactly is going on or did not go on with this particular reality. And it becomes very difficult to take a look at some of the jury's decisions, in some famous trials, to say, what on earth were these people thinking?
Right.
Because it doesn't make sense.
Do you listen to Almost Perfect? It's a podcast about the judicial system.
No, I haven't seen it.
Okay, I listen to a lot of podcasts, guys. They do a really great story on racial prejudice conspiracies, which are not, they're fact within juries, and it's all about what stories these people come up with in order to get prejudiced people onto juries and what the stories they tell themselves to convict people who are clearly innocent. So I thought you might be interested in that.
because somebody asked about Jimmy Carter trying to get to the bottom of the alien thing. It wasn't Jimmy Carter that said he was going to get to the bottom of it. Jimmy Carter was the one that told everybody that he had that he had seen a UFO.
No, he said on my campaign speech
Oh,
that
did
he
he?
was going to find
But
it.
Bill Clinton did try it, and I was, and he did an interview kind of recently, it's been within the past few years, where he did an interview and was talking about what his experience with trying to get to the bottom of the UFO thing was. He went to the CIA and says, and they told him, no, we're not going to tell you. Because he says, as president, there are things that when it becomes necessary for you to know them, we will tell you. It's not necessary for you to know that, so we're not going to
President
tell
Bill
you.
Pullman needed to know way earlier than he did.
Exactly.
I was going to bring up the point that he just did, that it was Clinton, not Congress.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Carter did do it. It was on a.
He made a campaign promise, but I don't think
Yeah, he's like, oh, I'm going to look into it, and then he's like, never mind, Iran-Contra.
Yeah.
Oh wait, wrong one. That's right. Sorry, Iran Consta situation.
Interesting. Okay.
We've got another.
I shouldn't wonder if conspiracy theories are kind of like shared universes. Because people keep adding their own part to the story, and the good parts get accepted, and the bad parts get rejected, and the story gets better and better and better. For example, Hangar 13 was used for cryogenic testing of aircraft parts. They put aircraft parts and put exposed to liquid oxygen, they make liquid nitrogen, you see they shatter. Well, if you had a body, you want to put it in someplace like Hangar 13 so you can freeze it. Ah! And the next thing you know, and so they took the bodies to Hangar 13, which was a they're backing into it, which was a cryogenics hangar, and wow, so that was the one they put them in. No, that was where they would have put them according to this part of the story.
So we're writing stories as
You're
a hive
stringing
mind.
beads is what you're doing, and you're ending up with a necklace.
Or perhaps a vacation at locations for my mother-in-law.
The interesting part is I actually went into one of the UFO magazines and saw a picture of what they considered a UFO. It was actually a B-52 bomber.
Well, the person who saw it didn't identify.
Maybe,
Yeah, it was unintended to them.
So technically it
to
was.
address what Ms. Baumgartner just said, maybe less hive mind, more crowdsourcing.
Oh, crowdsourcing.
Yeah.
And
It's a crowdsourced narrative.
if you listen to Thinking Sideways, I'm not on the payroll by them. They talk about getting to
You
this.
say,
You are my favorite pair. I should just admit that to them. It's a conspiracy theory that I am on the payroll.
Well played.
They talk about basically that hive mind sort of situation because to try to get the real facts about people disappearing or like coral castle, how do those pillars get up there and whatever. The facts keep changing on what people think is more interesting, so it's really hard to solve these mysteries because the stories have changed so many times over the years, especially Roswell, which I'm pretty sure is just an air balloon. I really do think that.
Oh, going back to something that was said before, I would like to, say some things in defense of juries. The jury is very carefully and according to legal requirements kept away from the contemporary hive mind, and they are given a very circumscribed set of pieces of data.
Right.
Not what the person on the street gets to hear, right or wrong. And they are given specific things to make decisions on,
Right.
which in many cases are not the sort of things that people think they ought to be deciding.
It's the selection process that
Yes.
most people consider the
But,
conspiracy.
they are, a typical juror is a lot like a horse that is given vertical blinders. And that's the way we want it to be.
Which means we could use that as an example for looking at the hive mind hypotheses of creating the story in order to come up with a verdict.
I was just going to ask what the panel thinks about the value of exploring conspiracy theory, or lack thereof.
What's that?
The value of exploring conspiracy theory, or theories for that matter.
Let's turn this in.
I think it tells us a lot about ourselves. Don't we all like to be scared at night around a campfire? Growing
Not
up,
particularly.
growing up, my grandfather would always tell tales of Bigfoot. And he swore till he died that such a thing roamed the woods of Idaho and Washington. So
Huge footprints were found in the snow around his body.
I think so. I think so. But it goes back. We love to embellish those, like you were saying. And then you were talking about juries, and then I keep thinking back to the slow white Bronco chase. What was that, 1993? And what went wrong with the jury, or what went right with that jury? I mean, that just went way out of control. I don't know. So.
It's interesting that you said that because right now there are two theories on things like how did the pyramids and all those types of things got built. One of them is the aliens did it. That's the popular consensus in what I'll call the secular world. In the Christian world, they say the demons taught it.
What? Never heard that one.
You guys never heard that one?
No.
You have to speak up, I don't think.
Okay, so in the Christian world, the theory is that the demons taught them.
Which Christian world? I've been looked at the.
I said in the theory I'm just being general, that's actually what's being purported on that side of it. So there's two different hive minds going on as far as who taught who, which I find very, very interesting. Because it's like we have documentation in the Bible that says this, and yet the world's saying this. So I find it really interesting.
Just offhand on the aliens, well, one of my favorite is aspirin and playing with Steve. And the problem there is what demons is in his book is dimensional travelers. It's a shortening of the word.
It's interesting. It's an interesting idea. Your turn.
Okay, now I forgot the question.
The value of exploring.
The value of
conspiracy theory.
exploring, I think it helps our creative minds. You know, I mean, right now, so much of our world is trying to take away our creativity. And I think we try, as humans, we try and cleave to something to create. And even if it is a conspiracy theory or, seeing a lion in the grass when it's just the breeze.
Where you bring that up, I enjoy like medieval fairy tales, like where the actual fairy tales come from, because if you can't read and you can't write, you have to tell a story to know when to plant, when to not get eaten by the bears.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what the danger things are. Conspiracy theories are, to me, they're kind of an ongoing, here's the story that we don't dare write down. More so now, but I remember when I was younger, it was word of mouth that they don't want you, they can tell you who they was, but they don't want you to know this, or they are covering this up.
So are you thinking about a certain one, or maybe the Green Knight? Or?
No, just, well, all of them. Like Little Red Riding Hood is, here's a life lesson to teach your children. Don't do this. I mean, there's so many, the Russians were really good at telling you plant this time of year or else the gods show up and kill you. Bad things happen. It was, here's the story of here's what to do. Here's what the moon change means.
So you're talking about the transition from conspiracy theory into folk tales?
Well, I think conspiracy theories are folk tales.
I think they're still working in working process. They're like going back to the hive mind, because some of them do actually prove out with facts, and others enter sort of this more mythical realm.
But I think there's merit to being like, oh, I didn't win this battle because the gods got mad that I threw the chickens in the ocean, which is a true Roman story, by the way. Which is one of my favorites. So I think there is merit to thinking that conspiracy theories originally were assigned to like, oh, Zeus is just being a dick right now.
He was that a lot, that's why he had all those kids. In answer to your question, yeah, I think it is worth looking into. Most conspiracy theories have some grain of truth at the core. If we look into them, we might find that grain of truth. We may not, we don't know. We're still looking for the grain of truth on the Kennedy assassination. Some people think we found it, some people don't think we don't know. At this point, I don't think we will, because it's been so convoluted so many times over the years. Something like Roswell been convoluted over the years, so what is the grain of truth, we don't know, but if you can find it, great.
Easy, his wife killed him.
You leave Jackie alone, she's a precious notebook.
Well, that would explain why she crawled out on the back.
So up and to the left.
It's just off the top of my head. It's probably it's a wild thought, but could there? I was thinking suddenly maybe there's a relationship to these wild conspiracy theories, and I'm thinking of the ones that are about that mean that you're not in control of you're not in control. Whether it's the Illuminati or the aliens made pyramids and taught us how to cultivate rice, or a shadow government, or all that sort of thing. Could having those big, huge, wild conspiracy theories give us somehow psychologically a feeling more control over our own lives, our own smaller lives? Just us. It's like, all right, I can't do anything about that, but by God, I can get my house cleaned then. I don't know. I think it's blame shifting. It's something that popped into my head, and it's like, but so if you believe that, you suddenly feel a little more in control in your own small personal world.
Well, let's use this as an actual theory, and all of us believe that there is a they, which is doing things that they should not do and affecting the world as we know it. Does that make any of us feel better in our personal lives?
Yes.
All right, that's
Okay, I've got a couple of hands up.
Well, especially if we know it.
The idea of conspiracy theories having a grain of truth behind them, we don't normally think of it this way, but the idea that a dozen Saudi nationals would establish legal residency in the U.S. just so they could take flying lessons and hijack several fully fueled commercial airliners just to crash them into buildings, that is a conspiracy. One involving a lot of people with multiple points of failure. It just happens to be one that was successful.
Yeah.
So I guess there's old saying, treason is never successful because when it's successful, you don't call it treason. Similarly, when a conspiracy actually works, we don't call it a conspiracy for some reason.
Okay.
I also like the idea that our society is run by lizard men with a purpose, because it's a little more comforting than a bunch of aimless people around everything.
See, all that kind of thought just makes me not want to shower though. I just get really worried that they're watching.
See, my theory on that part
But
is,
lizard people like
let
people
them
doing
watch.
Yeah.
They'll burn their eyes out.
You know, you're getting into social psychology. You know, this actually has been scientifically explored. The thing is that if you think about reality, it is so blooming complicated, and we're bombarded by it every day. You know, just think of all the elections going on here in Colorado, all the facts, you know, I mean, all the nuances of the issues and personalities and stuff like that. We go back to algorithms, you know, I mean, internal pre-existing thoughts that we have, how things should be or how we should do things. And we rely on those a great deal of the time. For example, all of the crap about who's ahead or who's behind in the last 3 months of the campaign is crap. It's absolutely crap. If you take a look at the polls after the political conventions, those are very accurate representation for the presidential race, and has been for the last 50 years. You know what I mean? So, you know, you just look at those polls, and you'll see, you know, what the result of the election will be, probably within plus or minus 1.5 to 2 points. But we go back and we don't look at facts. We look at our impressions and how we can put this together. Because if you have 3 screaming kids and you want to make a political decision, you're going to just go on your gut, aren't you?
Most of the time. And by the way, I'm one of those mysterious people that they poll, just so you know.
Really?
I am. I'm one of those mysterious people that actually does the polls.
Oh, you both quite often.
And I've been doing it for several years, actually.
We do it if it's less than 20 minutes.
I just and I'm done. Earlier we had made a valid point of talking about verbal to written, to now actually technical to the internet. So how does the internet affect conspiracy theories?
That's like a magnifier for sure.
Yeah. Time cube.
But the frustrating thing about the internet is like everything is just copy pasted.
But isn't the internet makes it easier to find your tribe?
Yeah,
exactly. Exactly.
It seems the internet is a megaphone for very small voices.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Not always. My vlog didn't do very well. No one watched it.
Well, that's just it. The attention side is important too.
Okay, gentleman with the hat in the air.
Yeah, it's not so much about the internet, but about technology. I've noticed that now that everybody has a phone with a camera in it, UFO conspiracies have sort of dropped almost completely off the radar. I mean, you still have some of the big stuff like Roswell, some of the more legendary some of the more legendary encounter and crash sites. But more average, everyday people seeing UFOs and getting pictures of them, that's gone away. That's really gone away, especially in the last like 5 or 10 years.
Because everybody's too busy taking selfies.
Conspiracy.
Just offhand, though, on the pictures that are taken, I'm a strong believer in Photoshop, so I have a problem with believing what is taken on a picture.
When you're going back to technology, couldn't you say that in '68, Stanley Kubrick got 2001 right, and what we saw of the moon in that movie was so much better in '69 than with the actual or alleged moon landing.
Well, they didn't have the right special effects in that hangar where he shot it.
But they say Kubrick was the one who shot it. So.
I would not say that to Neil Armstrong.
He was on
He
punched someone in the face.
We're calling him a coward.
Oh, it's Buzz Aldrin. It was Buzz Aldrin. You're right.
I suspect if everyone actually did that.
You know?
Plus the fact that the Mythbusters actually proved that the landing happened.
Right.
Yep. Which I thought was.
They're not very
Actually, there's a lot
scientific
of
with a lot of their stuff.
different methods.
There are a lot of fun stuff.
I didn't get to say my value if anyone's interested in it.
Please.
Go ahead.
So I find conspiracy theories really valuable since I'm a writer, it makes writing stories way easier if I have stuff to go on. And I'm currently writing a novel about a magical Cold War, so I love cabal stuff right now. But I also think that it's a really good exercise in critical thinking. Because honestly, there's a lot of conspiracy theories I believe. I do believe MK Ultra happened. I don't think they were successful. I think they did put people in tubes and fed them LSD and did non-deprivation, whatever you call it, deprivation. Thank you. Talking is not my forte, I'm a writer. So, like, I just really like being able to go, okay, I believe in aliens, but I don't think Roswell happened. So I think that's a really positive thing. And what I don't like is there are some conspiracy theorists who don't utilize their critical thinking skills, and it gives kind of the rest of them a bad name. And it's just interesting because Art Bell, anyone listen to Art Bell? He doesn't believe anything that goes on, but he believes in open information. And so I like shows like that because it invites you to listen to new and interesting thoughts. And guess for yourself if that's real or not. Like the time traveler, I think is one of my favorite callers that calls in is like, I'm a time traveler and I'm gonna get all the facts wrong. Sorry.
So I have a question for the panel. Panopticon state, conspiracy theory or fact?
Oh, we have Foucaultian in here. The Panopticon.
The Panopticon state, conspiracy theory or fact?
Yeah, they're all watching.
It's a Foucaultian theory. Sorry, you can.
Is everyone being watched with everything they're doing all the time by the state or by small cabals within the state?
Have you heard of Google?
Remember, do no evil.
Once again, conspiracy theory or established fact?
Everyone all the time? That does not strike me as
Depends on what you mean by watch.
Well, that's a little
Right,
data sort of real.
That's sort of the question, to what degree are we talking watch? Are you eyes on everything, monitoring from time to time, that type of thing? And for CCTV, kind of, I would hope people had better things to do with their lives.
They're getting paid to do it though, if you go by the state.
But
In that case, they're
Hey,
not
there are
watching
people
at
that
all.
sling burgers for a living, there are people who could collect data for a living, I mean,
in line with that.
it's limited by server space.
Hands, please. Okay, lady in green.
Yes, I was a telephone operator back in the days of Ma Bell, when it was one thing, and it was commonly believed within the rank of operators that there were rooms elsewhere where people were constantly monitoring phone calls. And I remember then myself being highly skeptical of that because the amount of staffing it would have taken to do that, and the idea that, well, they were out there but nobody knew exactly where they were, again, struck me as very unlikely. But that's a notion that's been around for 50 years at least.
But we do know that telephone calls are recorded.
But this is back in the 60s.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah. Now, it used to be that the long distance operators, and this got changed right before I went to work there, when they plugged the thing in to answer the call and then connect, the switch in front of them went in two directions, and one was to let the two people talk to each other, and the other one, the operator could listen in, and they couldn't tell she was listening in. And one of the reasons the phone company then took that power away was they'd start talking about, they would listen in to phone calls of prominent people.
Did you?
Yeah, no, I didn't. No, I said that was changed right before I went to work there.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yes.
That's what you gentlemen here.
So where you're talking about monitoring all the time, people pay for that privilege. It's called Amazon Echo, Xbox One, where it's always on, it's always monitoring, and always learning your words better. So it is stored.
Yeah.
And they don't care to look back at you until there's a reason. I work for the VA system, and every keystroke you ever do is recorded. And if you're ever naughty, then they go back and see everything you ever did in your entire work history on a computer.
Okay, final comments from the panel. Nothing more from the audience at this point.
Well, yeah, before I got on this panel, I hadn't put much thought into conspiracy theories because it's just not in my brain to think about them very much. But then I realized while sitting and listening to all this talking, the books I've written are conspiracy theories. Because in my books, I have a secret race of humans living amongst us who, people don't realize what their nature is. They live for centuries, and people don't realize this. And so I guess I've been participating in conspiracy theory and creating one without realizing I was doing it.
I just like to hope that I'm not going to be the one with like the hood covered over my eyes, so I will believe in every conspiracy theory. Just in case reptilioids exist.
It's interesting, it's fun, and yeah, some of it's got enough truth out there to be real, and a lot of it's just shit politicians throw around.
I'd like to thank the audience. This has got my creative juices going.
Yeah, it has.
And
Yes, definitely.
It's been fun to listen to people talk and.
I'm halfway through a story on Jackie now. In my head.
Intended to boom, first of all.
The heel of her shoe is exactly 6.5 millimeters in diameter.
Thank you, pedophiles, yes.
You guys all did a great job being part of this. I tend to be a little more loose with my panels because I think that you get a lot more back that way. Me personally, conspiracy theories have been around for a long time and they still relate. No matter what happens. All right, thank you guys very much.